Hi, welcome back to the Re-readable podcast. I'm KG.
I'm Sammy.
And we're really glad that you're here today. We're talking about one of Sammy and I's favorite things today. And we're going to be doing a deep dive into fantasy, basically a fantasy 101. So whether you've read fantasy before, you've never read it, you know nothing about it, or you're kind of wanting to dip your toe in the water, this episode is for you.
It's very fitting too.
Yes.
Because KG's the one that got me into fantasy in the first place. So I'm super excited she's starting us out right now because these shelves wouldn't be possible without KG pushing me into the waters of fantasy.
Thank you so much, friend. It's been so fun. I'm glad. The reason I also pushed Tammy into this, so I had someone to talk to about these books.
To be here.
They're not as fun if you don't have somebody to talk
Agreed.
to about. Yeah,
agreed.
100%. So this is going to be so fun. So basically, we're going to try to keep this episode as spoiler-free as possible. This is really just going to be a high-level view of fantasy, but if for some reason we realize we're getting there, we'll try to disclose. But tune back into a future episode for a more deep dive into specific series, characters, plots, those kinds of things. So yeah, today's going to be very high level, and Sammy is going to kick us off and to tell us a little bit more about fantasy as a whole.
All right. I had to do a little deep diving, some research. So I'm starting out with a nice little deep dive on fantasy.
I'm really excited about
this. So
with
fantasy, we know obviously a lot of what we're reading is fiction. With that, you can see a bunch of different examples back here of different types of fantasy. So I'm sure
I did not even know that there was different types of fantasy until you did this research.
There's so many subgenres of fantasy.
I had no idea.
It blew my mind. And we don't read all of them.
No,
we read some of them, and some of them are a little bit more like high fantasy than what we read.
100%. We're still new as well.
Yeah, we have not hardly read everything, obviously.
No.
So if there's some kind of fantasy that you guys are really into, like, let us know, because then that'll be something we can look into too, which will be really fun.
Yes.
But some of the subgenres that me and KG read or have read or are reading is going to be some romantasy, some urban fantasy, and some high fantasy. But fantasy in general is just going to be some kind of like not real, far off place. It's made up, obviously. With fantasy, there's a ton of world building. There's all kinds of magic systems. There's magic creatures, magic beings, anything you can kind of imagine or think of.
It's basically like Disney on steroids.
And it's all thrown in at once. Like, it's not just like, oh, they have like a couple of powers. It's like they have some powers, and then they have powers, and there's a weird creature, and they do something, and
100%.
There's all kinds of other random things going on. And so there's basically a lot going on in fantasy. But with fantasy, like we said, there's a lot of different types and a lot of different subgenres. Romantasy is one of our favorites that we've read.
I think it might be my favorite.
I agree.
Honestly.
It's probably my favorite. We're the romance girlies over here.
Yes.
So
if a book does not have some sort of romance in it, it's a hard sell for me. I'm trying to get better, but
it's a hard sell.
It's a hard sell.
Read. I like
it is.
The whole time, like, I just want him to be in love. Like,
I know.
I just want him to fall in love.
Oh, girl, I understand.
So, romantasy is definitely our favorite.
100%.
I think that if that's something like you're really into romance and maybe you've never read fantasy before, that's a really good stepping stone, a really good like bridge into the fantasy realm. So back here, you can see some of the different books we're gonna like reference today. ACOTAR is going to be A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. That is the gateway drug of our book world into fantasy, and that's what KG got me started on, and it is definitely romantasy. So if that's something interesting to you, that's a good place to start.
I agree.
But there's the same thing as our fantasy like genre in general, with the world building and the magical creatures, the magical beings, but there's a little bit more of an emphasis on the relationships and on like the love and the love stories and stuff like that,
which I think really sells you on the whole story as a whole,
especially for us. Definitely sells us.
Even the relationships that aren't romantic though, she writes relationships in general really well. So I think if you're new to fantasy, it's a really great series to start with.
The friendships and the found families, 100%. All of that, if that's something you're into, really good.
And I think you find that a lot in romantasy series, whereas some of the other ones, it's not as much of a focal point. So
agreed. That's a good point. Another one that we've read is some urban fantasy, and urban fantasy is exactly what it sounds like. And it is a hot button type of fantasy, if you will. It's a real hit or miss whether you like it or don't. I personally really like it. From the couple urban fantasies that I've read, I personally like them.
I really like it.
A good example of that, if you start to read into this and start to read into the fantasy series, is going to be Crescent City, which is another Sarah J. Maas universe or
it's so
series,
good.
and so good. But it's exactly what it sounds like. So urban fantasy is going to be the ideas of all these magical creatures and the world building and the magic systems and all the different hierarchies and that stuff like that. Plus, it's basically like set in some kind of dystopian today type thing, like time period, and there's cell phones and guns. So it goes from this
100%
this weird like there's only magic and they're like using bow and arrows to then like, oh, they have like guns and knives and cell phones. And some people can't really get through that one, and some people really like it.
I think it's so
personally
fun.
It doesn't bother me. I think it's pretty cool. It's just another world that's been built. So that's another type. If that's something that's interesting to you, like you're really into more like contemporary romances and stuff like that, or maybe just contemporary urban dystopian type, I don't know.
I do think if you like dystopian books, then urban fantasy you will like, because it's very similar to the world building is kind of similar, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue too into like high fantasy, because there's a big overlap between the two. The big difference is that urban fantasy is like cell phones and technology, contemporary things. But high fantasy is going to be another one of those subgenres we were talking about, and it's still like completely fictional. It's all about like more of like about the quest and about like the journey and the prophecies and stuff like that. So there's a little bit more to high fantasy. Like I think if that's like, if you really like watching like the Lord of the Rings or something like that,
that's a good example.
That's a really good, maybe even if you've never read fantasy and you've watched Lord of the Rings and you kind of understand it and have a visual, that's a good series to read into. That's a good like example of high fantasy. But some of the series behind us, they have like a couple different genres like listed for them. So like Fourth Wing, for example, has been listed as high fantasy, and so that could be a good one to get into. There's a little bit of romance in there. There's a little bit of found family, so they all kind of overlap with each other, which makes it really fun to read. But
and once you start reading, you can find plots and types that you kind of like, because I definitely think, as Sammy and I have been reading fantasy the past
100%.
year, we've been able to pick up of, oh, I might like this fantasy book, but this one's probably not going to be for me. Not that you shouldn't give it a try, but at least as you're getting started, figuring out kind of what you like.
Yes, agreed. I totally agree with that. So now that we've like heard a little bit of the subgenres, maybe that's kind of helping you out a little bit. Let's talk about like, once we start reading fantasy, like what should we be doing?
Okay.
You want to get us started?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. We've taken so many notes, so we're trying to keep on track for you guys. So if you see us looking down at our phones, that's what we're doing. We're trying to not...
want to make sure you're very well informed.
Exactly, and not babble on about
because we could. It could be a pretty long episode if we were just babbling.
100%, yes.
What we're doing now.
So some things to keep in mind when reading fantasy. So start small. This is one thing that I think can be super overwhelming, is a lot of fantasy series, they're as thick as my Bible, you know, and that could be really overwhelming. And then maybe they have like Throne of Glass. How many books is that? 8, 9?
It's 8.
8,
and some of them are like over 900 pages or something.
Yes. See, that's really overwhelming.
Paige and I went on the deep end when we went into
fantasy. My goodness, and that was a little overwhelming. I felt like I lived there for a long time. So if you are very new to fantasy, you've never read anything, I would definitely start small. Start with a book that I would say is more romantic-y, or maybe a YA fantasy book, something that's not as much depth maybe and world building as some of the other ones. So that would be kind of where I'd recommend, and maybe do a series that's complete, or is only gonna be 2-3 books. I would say. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that.
There is nothing more heartbreaking than starting a series and it's like, oh, Like when I first started Fourth Wing, and it's like, oh, this is so exciting, and there are 2 more to go, and they're not.
I thought it
even
was going to be a
yet.
trilogy. So when I read the second one, I said, oh, that's not that bad. I'll just have to wait for the third.
No.
Little did I know I was very wrong.
So naive of us.
Oh, 100%.
So naive.
So naive.
Yes, we'll talk about some completed series if that's something that's interesting to you towards the end, though.
Oh, 100%. So while we're starting and start small, I would say my biggest recommendation for a series would probably be ACOTAR. It's not technically complete, but the main storyline that finishes after book 3. Really. There's a novella that kind of goes, but it kind of starts the next
But like,
book.
read the novella.
The novella is fantastic.
Anyone that tells you not to is a hater.
They're a liar.
Yeah.
It's very cute.
It's
very cute. But it kind of ends after book 3.
Yeah.
So I would say that's a great one to start with. And we can get into some more in just a minute, but at least to get you thinking, that would be one.
It was definitely my gateway to fantasy.
Oh, both of us. It was both of our gateways to fantasy, really.
So definitely recommend that one. Sarah, if you're listening.
It's fantastic. I have absolutely no notes.
No notes.
It was so good.
No notes.
Yeah, so definitely start small. That's a great series to start with. Towards the end of the episode, we'll give you guys some more thoughts of ones we'd recommend, but that's definitely something I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to get the next one?
Yeah. So I think too, when you're starting to read fantasy, something to keep in mind is like certain tropes that you like. If you're really like an active reader, or even if you're not a very active reader and you're just starting out, like
even movies that you like.
Yeah.
Things,
Think
shows.
about the tropes that are in movies and TV shows that you like. Like, do you really like friends to lovers? Do you really like an enemies to lovers? Do you like a love triangle? Those happen a lot.
They do happen a lot.
So think of something you might be interested in, because if you really, really know that you don't like a love triangle, maybe look for a different book. But
oh my gosh, yeah, that's in a lot.
Look through some tropes if that's something that might meet your fancy when you're starting a new book series.
100%. That's really good to know. I think that's important. You can get a little of everything in a fantasy book, so just figure out what you like. Okay, so this I think is so helpful. Sammy made this point. A lot of fantasy books have maps or guides to maybe cities or new words that they add into a book. These are pivotal. When we first started reading fantasy, I really didn't know what they were, what to expect. But it's basically when you get into this book, it's a new world and new things. And so they're so helpful to reference, just like when you were in school and you referenced a map. They're very helpful and I think add a lot as you're reading a story. So definitely don't feel like you're being dumb by referencing them. That's what they're there for, and it's very helpful, and I think enhances your experience when you read the book.
Especially when I start reading them and it's a whole new series, I must just like keep my hand on that page and I just like flip back and forth.
100%.
I have to know everywhere they're going. The name of everything.
Well, they start listing new cities,
oh my
gosh. And you're like, I don't know where that is.
No idea.
Yeah.
Super
it's very helpful, and every time an author does that, they automatically get points from me because it's very helpful. Yeah.
Have to read those, have to continue to reference those,
and sometimes they're in the back of the book, so maybe if you don't want to like spoil anything by flipping through, look it up and see if it's there, because we just read a book recently and it was in the very back of the book and I was lost the whole time.
It
would have been so helpful. Yep. So I learned a lesson, a good one, then to look up if there's one.
Yes, I think that's super smart. I think too with fantasy, we talked about like figuring out what kind of fantasies you're interested in and stuff. So that kind of goes along with the tropes. But something with fantasy is read every day. Even if it's just a chapter, like at your lunch break, or it's like one chapter listening to on the way home in an audiobook, because those count. If they tell you they don't, they're wrong. They count. Audiobooks count. Like at least one chapter. Sometimes you'll say I'm going to read one chapter and you get caught in a fantasy like 18 chapters later, but you're not alone in that. But try to read at least one, because if you lose part of that world building, the longer you wait to jump back in, the more confused you're going to be.
And you're not going to like it as much.
And you won't like it as much. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. I love that. Okay, let's see. Don't give up in the beginning of the world building. I feel like the first, 100 pages of a fantasy book, you're gonna really just be learning so much that it's gonna feel, I don't want to say like a trek, because that sounds bad and daunting, but you are having to learn new terminology, a new ecosystem, like a whole new everything. And so just give yourself grace and don't quit reading until you've gotten into it more, because I know that can kind of be, I don't know, it could be a little overwhelming, but I think it's so helpful because I've yet to read a fantasy book that's a standalone, and so that setup is so important. And once you get in and you're on book 2 or 3, stuff that was there at the beginning is just gonna blow your mind, and it's gonna be so insane. And so don't give up, because it's really gonna mean so much to you later on.
Yeah, and we've all been there. If you start and you are struggling, like, you are not alone. You're not the only person that has like read the same page like 18 times and like, bored out of my mind. What does any of this mean? But it's so important, and it'll be so helpful later on. You just have to really push through.
It's crazy. I think one thing to know about fantasy too is these authors are the queen of just subtle hints, throwaway comments almost, that come back to be so important later. So don't take anything as being not important or
every
a filler
word on that page is just important.
I can't tell you how many times my mind is blown based on like one little sentence that I missed. You know?
And in every different series we read, but like I'm thinking in my head right now because we just finished Onyx Storm recently. There's like a blurb above every chapter heading, and I know there's a name for it and I can't think of what it's called.
I can't remember either. I don't know.
Bad book girls. But there's like this blurb at the beginning of every chapter, and it's like information that's so pivotal, and I read it every single time and I'm like, what does this mean? Like, there's just so much information, but it's all helpful. Like, it's all so good.
And it's gonna be so special later when you put 2 and 2 together.
Once you finally like it clicks,
it's a good feeling.
It's a good feeling. I agree.
I love it. Ooh, that was good to know. Good to know.
And I did say something about audiobooks earlier. Audiobooks are super helpful when you're reading any kind of fantasy and you're just like, especially at the beginning when you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't get past this. It's so slow. There's so much information, because it does kind of feel like an info dump. And once you get through that, obviously the story like really takes off. But if that's something you're struggling with, listen to it on the audiobook. That's totally really fine. And it counts. It counts, and it can help you get through it a little faster. So if you want to do it that way, totally a good idea. But
I love it.
I think those are some really helpful tips like when you're starting fantasy. So if that's something that's interesting to you so far and you're still interested, you're still tracking with us when it comes to fantasy, one thing that we did say was think about tropes that you're really interested in. So we have a good list of tropes that pop up pretty often when it comes to fantasy. Sometimes more than one of these are in a lot of times it's more than just one, because there are sub characters and other things that will embody these. The world building doesn't just like, it does not just the world, it's all of the friends and the enemies and the partners and the friendships and all of that. So
it's so fun. You want me to hit them?
Take us through the tropes.
I shall take us through the tropes. Okay, so some of the ones that I would say, based on the ones that the fantasy books that Sammy and I've read before, these are some really common tropes. So enemies to lovers, one of my personal favorites.
Love. 10 out of 10.
Ooh,
in both contemporary romance and fantasy.
Amen.
Anywhere we can find it.
I love it. I think it's so great.
Anywhere we can find it.
But those are in a lot of fantasy books. I would say a love triangle, forbidden love, chosen one, good versus evil, always going to be in one, because like we've said before, a lot of times there's some sort of magic system. So there's always going to be a good versus evil. Lost heir, I do like that trope sometimes. That can be a really fun one.
That can be pretty fun.
Second chance, fated mates. I had never read anything fated mates, did not know what that meant until
I was like, yes you have.
No before fantasy, but I remember reading it, ate it up the first time.
10 out of 10.
Really fun. Prophecies, damsel in distress, and forced proximity. Those are some of our personal favorites. And that have been in a majority of the ones we've read.
Yeah. They're in almost all the books we've read, sometimes multiple drama. Of them per book. Yeah, so much drama.
It is so fun. They're addicting. Y'all.
Yeah. And with our tropes that you guys normally see. There's also some content warnings and some
Yes.
trigger warnings. I know that there might be some young adult readers out there, and there might be some readers like we've talked about in the past. Like, we really like to make things closed door, or try as much as we can to have things closed door. Something with fantasy is that there are going to be a lot of like content or trigger warnings with fantasy.
There's a wide range because there's you can get young adult books all the way up to maybe a more mature one. So I think definitely this is important to note because it's a wide range.
Yeah, it's a super wide range. And like she's saying, like, there's a lot of young adult books that like we're totally into and they're right here on my shelf. And then there's some that are a little bit more mature. But with that, what I'm about to read sounds a little scary. Please know that it's not that scary and it's not like that much, but we want you to just make sure you're informed. So I'm not like trying to deter you with anything. We just want to make sure you're comfortable. So that's like our kind of our content warning for the content warning.
Absolutely.
So
we also have, before you get into this, we mentioned this in our intro episode, but we have created, we're still very much in the works of getting it to the way we want.
We have a lot of fantasy on there already.
We do have a lot of fantasy. We kind of started with that to get a good base since we knew we were doing this episode. But we have created a reader's guide for you guys. I think we're calling it like Re-readable podcast reader's reference guide or something like that. It sounds very fun.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Ooh, I love the way it sounds. But we've worked really hard in adding certain trigger warnings per book, chapters to skip if you don't want sort of anything spicy or anything like that. So we've tried to be really diligent in including anything that could potentially be a trigger for you guys. So you can always find that on our link tree on any of our social medias. It'll be linked in our YouTube description, all the things. So anytime you're interested in reading a book, if you have any sort of thing that triggers you or something that you feel convicted about and want to avoid, we've tried to list it in this guide.
And you can always do your own research and stuff too.
Absolutely.
But if you want to reach out to us on social media as well, like,
absolutely,
and you know that we've read those books, or maybe we haven't, and we can do the research with you. But if it's something we've read and you're really concerned before reading, or a parent might be, like, totally reach out.
Absolutely.
We'd love to talk about what we
That's
experienced.
what we're here for.
Right.
Yes.
And that's especially what our little link is for our closed door reference guide. We want to make sure that you guys can do the research and feel ready to read before you get there, and you're not going to
be surprised.
Be surprised. Exactly.
Exactly.
So again, what I'm going to share with you, it doesn't happen in every fantasy book.
No.
These are just common things that happen in fantasy overall. And again, just want to inform you, not scare you or anything like that. Just, make sure you know before you get into things. With fantasy, some content warnings will include some kind of sexual interactions, both consensual and non-consensual, sometimes sexual assaults, physical abuse, emotional abuse, child abuse, fighting, war, murder, graphic violence, blood, gore, injury, especially described in pretty graphic detail, suffering, torture, kidnapping, loss, grief, some suicidal thoughts, and lots of language. Again, none of these are I'm saying to scare you, just giving you a warning. We just want to forewarn you. Because there are some books that have this, and there are ways to skip around it, and there are ways to avoid it depending on the series you pick. So just keep that in mind when you're starting to look through series, and we can recommend series too that are very young adult and very young adult friendly and more comfortable for us reading that don't have as much of that stuff in it. And I'm not saying that I've read all of these either. These are just very common things that you find in fantasy, so you're aware.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sammy. That was really good.
Yeah.
Now that we have done the rundown,
all the
hard work to set you up, we want to give you guys some recommendations of some of our personal favorites.
Yes.
We have read some really good fantasy series, so please don't let anything that you guys have heard scare you. This is, I think, besides romance, this is my favorite genre of book. They're fantastic. They're so addicting, and I feel like so immersed.
Yes.
What's the word? Immersive?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the one.
They're very immersive. So when you start them, I just can't even tell you how many times hours will go by and you won't even know.
It's done.
They're so good.
I read through 16 fantasy books, all of Sarah J. Maas's universe.
In like 1 month.
While I was having a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
In less than 2 months.
I had no life besides work.
I don't know what I was... if I ever slept, I'm not even sure how I
Oh,
was
no
surviving.
way. I was up to like 1, 2
I don't know
a.m.
what I was
every night.
doing.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Very immersive. Will take you, like,
They're so
take you
good.
away.
Oh, yes.
If you're looking for, like, a lot of us go to read to escape.
Really
these are the
good.
places to
They're a
escape
great
to.
book, especially to take on a vacation, honestly, because then you don't have to put them down. You don't have work or
That's right.
responsibilities
No
or whatever.
responsibilities. You can go through that book in a day.
I know. Oof. Okay. Well, we're going to kick it off with some of our favorites. Sammy, do you want to start with your first and then I can go to next?
I guess I'd have to say ACOTAR.
Oh, 100%. I know we keep
harping on
saying it.
and it's just such a good one to start with. It's such a good one overall.
It's so good.
Literally, my husband read the first couple.
Oh, I had my husband read.
Yes.
He read the first
someone
3.
else.
100%.
Because I reference it all the time.
Oh
I
my
talk
gosh.
about it
We've
all the
started a
time.
little group
Yeah.
where we've had everybody read them. They're
Whole
so
group.
good.
Yeah, and I love the female main character. I love the story.
She's my favorite female main character, I think,
Same.
in any fantasy
I think
book.
so too.
Yeah, she's
I
fabulous.
do too. And we won't spoil anything for you, but
No.
she's the best, and I love her. Like even
I
when my
love-
husband was reading, I knew exactly. I would be like, "What's happening?" And I would take the book out of his hand and like read the chapter just to like relive it one more time and like give it back to him.
Oh
At
my
one point, I
gosh.
think I read it out loud to him because I was like, "I just want to be with you reading it right now. Like I just want to join you." It's
I want to do a reread of it this year.
Rereadable.
Oh, it's
ACOTAR.
1000% readable. Oh my gosh, yes.
That's
we're
why
gonna
we
do
started
a
this whole
reread.
thing. That's what we were talking about was ACOTAR.
We are gonna do a reread of that this year.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not
I
gonna
will.
for you, but
No, I
I'm going
will.
to. I've been missing it too
Especially
much.
because like right now while we're filming it's like her 10-year anniversary.
Yes.
So we have to.
We have to get prepared
Sarah,
for the
if
next
you want to bring
book.
out the second book or the 6th book, the next one, that would be awesome.
We're on the edge of our seats, girl.
Yeah, quite literally.
But it's so good. I feel like the best way I would describe it is like Beauty and the Beast
100%.
meets, I don't know, like
I think I said it met like
live action Cinderella.
Live
You
action
said that, and that was
Cinderella.
really good.
meets also like kind of a little bit Twilight.
Yeah. I could see it. I could
And-
see it. Yeah.
And I don't know how to make that make sense to you, but when you read it, that'll make
Oh,
sense.
it's cozy though. Yeah, it's really good.
And at no point did I know what was going to happen next.
No.
And I'm someone that like when I read, I'm like, oh, this is so fuzzy and
Yes.
warm and I can expect what's happening. Even like a third act breakup, I'll see coming. But like at no point did I know what was happening.
It's really good, guys, and there's a lot of romance in it. So if you are a romance reader ahead of time, this is a great one to start with.
100%.
Love it. It was our first fantasy series. Okay, so this is one of my all-time favorite fantasy series ever, and it's called Carval by Stephanie Garber. It is sitting up here on the shelf behind us. She also wrote Once Upon a Broken Heart, which I also think is good. Carval was my personal favorite. Sammy
I
was
liked Once Upon a Broken Heart
switched.
more.
But I think they're both really great starter series to fantasy, especially for our younger readers. They are young adult fantasy, so very mild for any sort of theme, thematic, like intense things that we mentioned.
Yeah.
Very, very mild. And I would say, I was thinking about this. The best way I would describe Carval is Greatest Showman meets Now You See Me.
100%.
And that was how I would.
Excellent.
And
Yeah.
I ate it up. It's
Yeah.
so good. And the first book, it's about 2 sisters. The first book of Carval is about one sister. The second book is about the other sister, and then the last book is kind of dual between the two. If I'm remembering correctly,
it's about both of them.
it is fantastic. I literally loved it. Ate it up. I think it's a great starter series, especially if you're a younger reader.
And to follow Carval, because you should read Carval first, because you get
Oh,
introduced.
that is so important. I'm so glad you said that. Yes,
That's a huge thing in fantasy.
people
We should
miss
have mentioned.
this. Yes, people
Read
miss
things in the
this.
correct order.
Yes.
And if you don't know the right order, come ask us and we'll help you out.
Goodreads also, if you guys have a Goodreads, a lot of
Yes.
times links like shows the order, but Carval it actually doesn't. So definitely read Carval first.
Because I like Once Upon a Broken Heart better.
And that's
but
okay.
The character, the main male character in that, who Once Upon a Broken Heart is about, is introduced during Carval.
It will
So,
mean so much more to you if you read
yes,
it first.
It really will mean a lot more. And
They're fantastic, and they're both completed series.
both
So
completed. Super important. We love
I
completed series.
love a completed series.
We love an ending. We love it.
yeah. So great series to start with because you're not going to be waiting around for another one.
Right, which some of the series behind us we've been waiting around for quite a while. One series we have down here too that's like a good one to start with especially young adult, would be the Powerless series by Lauren Roberts. And that's like very much like this generation's Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
Our generation was Hunger Games, and they are the Powerless trilogy.
100%.
And today, when we were recording this, her last book, so it'll be complete whenever you hear me talking about this, the series will be completed. Fearless, the third one in the trilogy, does come out tomorrow.
So it's completed.
So it will be completed by the time you hear this. And it is also young adult. There's no like real
It's
spice.
so mild.
It's so mild.
Even with language. I think that it was very mild. Yeah.
And I think it's a really good, I would say it's kind of like this generation's Hunger Games.
100%. I think that's a great way to say it.
If I had to compare it to something.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's cute. It's cute.
It is a cute one.
One more that Sammy has not read that I'm getting her to read, but it's actually a duology. There's only 2. It's completed. They're coming out with another one actually this year, but it's in no way part of this. It's just about a character, so it's going to be a standalone, I think, but it's completed. And it's Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Is that her last name? I know her first name is Rebecca. Don't quote me on her last name, but it is really, really good. It is just 2, like I said. It takes place in London, but it's fantasy, so it's not, I don't think they actually call it London. I'm trying to remember, but it's very good. It is so cozy. Basically, they drink a tea all the time in the book. I don't know how to explain it to you other than it's epitome of cozy, and I loved it. And I feel like they work at a newspaper, the main 2 characters, and they're reporting on the war.
Okay.
But it's like
she's selling
a magical war. Yeah. I don't know. I loved it, and I felt like the main guy character was very different than any other guy character. The usual fantasy guy character, is this big tough muscular brawl kind of guy, and he was very much not like that, but in a great way. It was really good. I thought they were great characters. It was really good.
And it's on Kindle Unlimited.
Oh my gosh, yes, very important. I don't think the rest of them are on Kindle Unlimited, but this one is. So what, you have no excuse.
That's
not
right.
To read it.
Especially if you're a KU reader like us.
It is so good. You have got to read it. This is on your list for the year.
It's on my TBR. I'm gonna do it. If it's not cozy though, I low-key might wait till the fall.
Oh yeah, honestly, it's perfect. I read it in the fall.
Okay.
It was great.
It'll make it cozier.
Oh yeah, you definitely should.
Good idea.
A rainy day or fall.
I like it.
Oof, I want to read it again.
Speaking of books we want to read again. ACOTAR.
Yes.
Have we said it enough tonight? I'm not sure.
I know. We are a broken record at this point. It is our favorite.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Some of our favorites we've already talked about. We want to tell you some like completed and incomplete series.
Yes.
That might be something super helpful to you, especially if you're starting out in the fantasy world. Some completed series, like we've said, the Carvel series, the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, Powerless will be completed upon you hearing this. Yes, literally tomorrow for us. What else is completed?
Let's see. Divine Rivals.
Oh,
okay. So I have a couple on here that Sammy has not read yet, but that we'll be reading.
Yeah.
What the River Knows. I cannot remember the author's name, but What the River Knows. It's also a duology, and it takes place in Egypt, but it's a fantasy. It was super cute, super fun. They're very YA, very clean, very mild. I read them while I was in Egypt on a trip, so it was like perfect timing.
There's no other way to read those.
I love to do that whenever I'm on a trip, read something as themed. So that's a great one to read. They're so mild. Like I said, they're complete. They're also on Kindle Unlimited, so that's a great series to start with. Low magic, so I think it's not so overwhelming, not a ton of world building, so it's great. And then one that I read recently is Serpent in the Wings of Night by Carissa Brabant, I think is her name,
and she had the best things to say about this series.
My gosh, it was so good. Technically it's not complete, but she's doing 6 books and 2 are about a character. Does that make sense? The first 2 are about a set, next 2 about a set, and then the last 2 will be about a different character. She has not announced who they're about. So she has 3 out right now, and the 4th comes out this summer. So technically the first plot is done.
Okay.
And I thought they were fantastic. So at least you could read the first 2. They're on Kindle Unlimited. It was very good.
I really want to read them. After you had rave
5 stars. I was shocked. I rated the first one 5 stars. It was so good.
Shocking.
It was fantastic. I don't know I feel like I had a comparison. It's kind of Twilight. They're vampires, but it's also like Hunger Games. I don't know. Just read them.
Got it.
And they're sort of complete.
Sort of complete, yeah. And even just halfway done is nice. Starting an incomplete series where there's like 1 book out and there's 7 more to go is daunting. So daunting.
Yeah,
I think some incomplete series that we've kind of talked about or hinted around. Fourth Wing is incomplete.
Yeah,
Fourth Wing is super popular right now. The Empyrean, I think that's what the actual series is called. The Empyrean series. Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, Onyx Storm just came out in January. We've got 2 more coming. That one's a bit of an emotional roller coaster for us. We're on a high right now, but it hasn't always been that way.
We have very mixed reviews.
Can't wait to talk about that one with you guys.
Tune back in later.
Yeah, tune back into that one. ACOTAR is incomplete. Incomplete. The first, kind of like what KG was saying, the first couple is about like 1 plot or storyline, and those are complete, I think you could say. If you can't see me, there's air quotes around that. They're complete, but the story is continuing, and so we have a lot of loose ends that we're trying to figure out.
One thing to say, not to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Sarah J. Maas, who's the author of ACOTAR, Crescent City, and Throne of Glass that we mentioned, she's the queen of intertwining series. So also something could be complete, like Throne of Glass is technically complete, but she weaves characters into books like something I've never experienced. So if you're gonna get into hers, I'd highly recommend reading all of them.
You have to. If you decide to join us in the Sarah J. Maas universe, I would recommend the reading order of ACOTAR and that whole series. So again, that's A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yep. And then I would recommend reading Throne of Glass or Tog, and then reading Crescent City.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
I think based on like things that you see,
I agree,
in the weaving that KG is talking about.
Yep. Trying to be very selective for our words.
Yes. I would say that is the order I would read them in.
I would agree.
But speaking of Throne of Glass and Crescent City, Throne of Glass is allegedly complete. It's only 8 whole books, so I don't know.
I don't think it's going to be, though.
How?
But I hope.
I hope it's over.
Never mind.
It's 8 books.
I'm not going to give any spoilers.
Yeah, we will talk about Throne of Glass in
another episode.
Very detailed episode. We have so many thoughts and opinions, and we can't wait to share them with you. But no spoilers right now. So Throne of Glass is 8 books long and allegedly is over. There are, like we've said, some weaving and some tie-ins, so that will happen. Crescent City is 3 books in right now.
Yes.
And allegedly there's a fourth.
How many is going to be in that series? I think know.
There's at least 4 because there's 4 houses. So there's 3 houses done. So that doesn't really give anything away. It's from the guide in the very first page of the book.
And the title.
Right. Literally the title.
The house of blood,
the house of something, the house of something, the house of something. The other house is the one we're missing.
Yep.
So,
it's going to at least be 4, but I have no idea how many.
Yeah. And there's a lot of loose ends in Crescent City right now.
Yes.
Which
it's making me crazy.
Crescent City fans.
I love Crescent City. I know it's kind of a hot take.
Yeah. It's
compared to her 3 series. Right. This is like her most hated on. I loved every moment of it.
It's because of the urban fantasy. Like we said earlier, some people get it and some people don't like it. And it's okay.
Great.
And then ACOTAR is also incomplete. So that's another incomplete series.
No idea how many it's going to be. She hasn't said anything about it.
No idea when. We're waiting, Sarah.
We have no idea
impatiently
who even the next book will be about.
And we both have different opinions on who we want it to be too.
know. Okay, another episode.
We'll talk about it on another episode. Stay tuned for our Sarah J. Maas episodes. We've got so many.
I can't wait.
Well, I think those are most of our complete and incomplete series.
There's so many other fantasy series as well, so don't feel like you need to stay with just this list. These are the ones we've been able to get through, so that's why we're kind of recommending them. But
and we started our fantasy journey basically this time 1 year ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like we're experts and have been reading this our entire lives. Like I think literally last April April was when I first picked up ACOTAR.
I think that's right. It's our anniversary.
It's our anniversary.
Oh my gosh.
ACOTAR.
We should have got cake.
We should have got cake.
That would have been so fun. Dang, missed
Shoot.
opportunity.
Next one, we'll have cake.
Time.
Next time we talk about ACOTAR, we'll eat cake.
Exactly. We'll blow out some candles.
I love that.
That would have been so
That's
fun.
funny.
Okay, next time.
Yeah, we will. You'll see us eating cake.
Really fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
So
do you have anything else?
I think
feel
that's
like we have given you guys a
lot of information. Sorry for the info dump, but
Don't
it's
be
important
overwhelmed.
to start with as much information as you can.
Yeah,
So
we
you
wanna
can make
equip
the,
you.
the choices you want for what series you want to start with.
Yeah, don't be overwhelmed. It's so much fun. I feel like even if you read Hunger Games,
Twilight,
you'd love fantasy. It's just
if
a
you
new
read,
era of that.
Yeah. Divergent,
Oh yeah.
Hunger Games, all
Matched,
of those.
any of that. Yeah.
Any of that. Or even if you've watched the movies
100%.
and really liked
Yeah.
them, or maybe didn't like them, I don't know. But if you've watched the movies and that's something interesting to you, that could also be a really good segue into reading them.
They're lots of fun. We love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah, and remember, this is not the only thing we'll talk about. So
Oh yeah.
if you made it this far, amazing. But if you really were like, okay, I thought we were going to hear something about romances, don't you worry. We will be back with some romances, some sports romances. Don't you worry. Some rom-coms, all of that good stuff. Kindle Unlimited, authors and series. We have lots to talk about, and fantasy is just one component of what we're talking about on here.
Absolutely.
And you can check our social media all the time because we will be posting and have all kinds of fun content for you there that's not just fantasy exclusive if that's not something that's interesting to you.
Absolutely. We try to read a very wide variety of books, not just fantasy.
In the fantasy and romance categories.
Yeah.
By wide range, we
Yeah.
mean
Within the two genres.
within these genres. But very wide range in those genres.
Well, I'm a little better, I'm sure, at some point.
Yeah, it's fine.
Just not today. Okay.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. We had the best time.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time on Re-readable Podcast.
Bye, guys.
Bye.